Mr. Stewart, you have the floor for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the National Capital Commission for the witnesses appearing here today. I understand the $8 million barn is part of the operations zone site map sent to the committee by the NCC yesterday labeled barn building. From photos we've seen, it looks more like a detached garage with 4 doors or a cement building with some solar panels on it. Can you tell us who approved this ridiculous $8 million barn project and how it's possible to spend $8 million on a barn?
So thank you for the question. So the service maintenance and storage building has been part of plans initiated by the NCC as far back as 2013, 2014, where we indicated in our corporate plan the need to replace the 4 buildings which were later demolished and replaced by the single service maintenance and storage building.
Thank you for that. Thank you. My question is who approved it?
So as a federal crown corporation, the NCC has an independent board of directors, which is responsible, Mr. Chair, for approving all expenditures over a certain threshold, which included the monies for this project.
Okay. How is it possible to spend $8 million on the facility?
So, Mr. Chair, I would start by saying $8 million is a lot of money. The NCC takes the stewardship of all its public funds very, very seriously. Important in this context is to recall, as I said in my opening statement, that the cost of this project included the demolition of the previous existing buildings, the decontamination of contaminated soil on sites, studies, design, all of the soft costs, as well as the construction costs for this building. I think to give you a slightly longer answer, there are 3 important contextual factors that often lead to the prices of infrastructure being even higher than they might normally be. One is we're operating on a national historic site. And so that means you have to go through layers of federal approvals. You have to ensure that the design and the character of the building reflects the historic
I appreciate that answer so far, but clearly the cost of climate change effectively has made this clearly, vastly, and egregiously more expensive for the taxpayers of Canada. Canadians are properly outraged that while regular citizens are tightening their belts and making financial sacrifices, the Trudeau government approves spending $8 million on what you now call a service, maintenance, and storage facility. Has anyone been held accountable for this outrageous spending? Has anyone been fired?
Just 1 second, Mr. Stewart. I have a point of order.
So the witness just clearly identified that the NCC is independent of the government.
Mr. Bush, you know that's not a point of order. You're welcome to have your turn to get your remarks on the record. And as well, the witness, of course, will have a turn to response as well. Mr. Stewart, I did stop the clock. You've got 3 minutes left. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Has anyone, through the chair to the NCC CEO, has anyone been held accountable for this outrageous spending? Has anyone been fired? And will any managers or executives at the NCC, including but not limited to yourself, lose a bonus or pay raise over this scandal?
So, Mr. Chair, what's important to note, I think, in terms of understanding the context of checks and balances on spending conducted by the NCC are 3 important salient points. One of them is we are subject to an annual audit by the Office of the Auditor General. The Office of the Auditor General has every opportunity to do an examination of the NCC spending and provide any recommendations or advice.
I'd like to get a yes or no on these answers. So, number 1, has anyone been held accountable? That's a yes or no. Has anyone been fired? That's a yes or no. And has any manager or executive lost a bonus over this? Those are 3 questions. I'd like yes and no's, yes or no's for all 3 of them. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, I do think it's important in answering this question to provide a sense of what the financial oversight is.
Question, though. No, hold on. I have the floor. The beauty of committee is that I get to ask the questions on behalf of the taxpayers, And all I'm seeking are yeses or nos. They're very simple answers. Everybody can understand what they mean. That's all I'm looking for. Thank you.
So on terms of accountability, which is what I was getting at, ultimately the board of the NCC is accountable for these projects. I, as the chief executive officer, am obviously the senior manager. And so the accountability lies both with the board and with me as the chief executive officer. So I hope I've answered the question. In terms of employment, no, there have been no employees who have lost their employment at the NCC for reasons that I've explained at the outset, in terms of the fact that we take the stewardship of public funds very,
Thank you for
seriously.
that. Third question was, has any manager or executive, not limited to yourself, lost a bonus or pay raise over the $8 million expenditure for a barn?
No.
Thank you for that. All right. How can spending $8 million on a barn that houses 0 people and provides no economic benefit be a good use of taxpayers' money?
So, Mr. Chair, I think there are 2 important things to note in terms of the function of the actual building. One of them, it is the building that houses between 20 and 40 full-time and part-time staff. So think of groundskeepers.
Excuse me, the barn employs 20 full-time staff?
It's the touchdown workstation.
But I didn't
Mr.
ask
Chair.
you that, though. I'm asking you about the
And
barn.
Mr. Stewart, I'm afraid that is your time. I know we'll be coming
Okay.
back to you. I appreciate that. Mr.
Voice.
Mr. Nader, good day. You have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, thank you to our witnesses for joining us. First off, where does the elevator go?
The elevator goes down into the basement. The basement is a place where we store a lot of the materials, a lot of the equipment, and many of these are of a size and weight that you can't transport via stairs. And so there's a freight elevator that moves between the 2 stories of the facility.
So there is a basement, and that clarifies that point. 2019, it was your first year as NCC CEO. That was the year that the budget was approved. You were fresh off from being a municipal councillor, where you were accountable to your ratepayers for value for money and for dollars. So in your first year, you saw a budget be approved by your board for $8.6 million for this storage facility. As a former accountable politician, were there no red flags raised at that point in your mind about an $8+ million facility?
Mr. Chair, one thing I said at the outset that bears repeating is $8 million is a lot of money. And I have a responsibility to my board and to the taxpayers of this country to deliver all of the NCC budget as effectively and efficiently as possible. So if the question is, did I ask questions, the answer is yes. And I think the staff can confirm that a big part of my job is challenging numbers, asking questions, ensuring that we are delivering projects as effectively as possible.
So as an addendum to that, were any considerations given to alternatives to actually constructing such a facility, including off-site facilities?
The answer is yes. There was some consideration given to whether or not this is a facility that could be built off-site, and that was actually a line of inquiry that I initiated shortly after arriving. The answer was no, in large part due to the fact that Rideau Hall, being 79 acres, is really the locus, the center of where a lot of the maintenance work happens, and it wouldn't have been cost-effective to build something like this off-site. That was the conclusion, given the fact that the employees who work in Alexi's shop are based on-site and need to have easy access to the equipment.
How many bidders were there for the contract that Pomerleau ultimately won?
I wasn't at the NCC at the time. I believe it was, I mean, is that information that's publicly available? I think it was 3, but I'm going to sort of...
Can we confirm that in writing to the committee within 3 weeks at the most?
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Pomerleau had the ultimate contract. How many subcontracts were there in total?
So my recollection of the project is that there were 20 subcontracts that were bid in a competitive fashion.
And how many of those were sole source or had only a single bidder?
Mr. Chair, I can answer part of the question in the sense that amounts below a certain amount, there would have been some sole sourcing done for smaller amounts. How many single bidders within the 20? I don't have that information.
What is that amount? Like in terms of the number where there would be sole source, what would be the dollar figure?
I don't think we have it on hand. It would be my guess would be it would be a small proportion of the overall contract amount.
Could you confirm all of that in writing for this committee, including the number of contracts, the amounts, and whether they were sole source or a single bidder?
Yes, Mr.
that's
Chair.
acknowledgement. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Chair. Was GC Strategies involved in any of these contracts? Has NCC done any work with GC Strategies?
No.
Thank you for that. I know it's a little off topic, but was something that we thought ought to get in public. In your corporate plan, 2022 to 23 to 2026, 2027, you write, however, going forward, these are no longer viable means to mitigate the impact of the financial pressures as described in this summary of the corporate plan. The NCC's operating revenue reserves will be depleted by the end of the second year of the plan. Furthermore, the NCC's ability to generate additional revenues is reaching a plateau due to limitations in its legislative authorities. So this is in your corporate plan, basically saying that, you know, your reserves are going to be more or less depleted, but at the same time, you're coming to us and justifying an $8 million plus storage facility or whatever we want to plan it.
Question, please.
Is this really a good use of taxpayer dollars?
Mr. Chair, I think it's really important to note the difference between our operating budget and our capital budget. And I believe the line the member was referring to in the corporate plan was referring to the fact that we've had static budgets in operating. And as I say, thankfully, we have over the course of the last 5 years, received additional capital funds that have allowed us to start addressing the deferred maintenance challenge.
Over to Ms. Vignola, you have 2 minutes 30. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Nussbaum, were other buildings on the Rideau Hall grounds renovated? Will they be renovated over the next 5 years? There are lots of buildings to renovate at Rideau Hall, the most essential one being Rideau Hall itself. A 25,000 square foot building. What are the estimated costs to renovate all of these buildings over the next 5 years? Over the next 5 years, the capital projected costs is a bit beyond the point. The deferred maintenance for Rideau Hall would be $31 million. And this is just Rideau Hall, none of the other buildings on its grounds. Yes. In your opening remarks, Mr. Nussbaum, you spoke about ensuring optimal function of the Rideau Hall site. Just to bring it around to my first comment, when you optimize buildings, do you consider the heritage aspects of the buildings in question? Yes.
As a National Historic Site, even though the operation zone is separate, and as you've seen from the handout, is not next to Rideau Hall, we still have to honor and respect the regulations and policies that govern National Historic Sites. So, for instance, the construction of the service maintenance and storage building was subject to review and approval by the Federal Heritage Buildings Review Office.
OK, ça a été révisé par Patrimoine Canada, ce garage-là.
So the buildings fall under Heritage Canada. Even this building, this garage made of concrete blocks, that was considered in line with heritage standards? Let me state my surprise here, because it looks like any industrial building in any industrial park in any city. It doesn't look like a heritage site.
It's important to make a distinction. The entire site is a National Historic Site, and by virtue of the service maintenance and storage building being constructed on a National Historic Site, it is subject to approval by the Federal Heritage Office Review, Federal Heritage Buildings Review Office, excuse me. It is accepted by all of us that this is not a heritage building. So I just wanted to agree with the member on that, Mr. Chair.
Merci beaucoup. Mr. Stewart, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, through you to the witness, I think I asked 26 questions between now and the first time when the Treasury Board and Public Works were here, and they basically said you guys could answer all of those questions. So obviously seeing that the time restraints on today, I'm going to email you through the chair every question that was unanswered, and we have a rule at this committee that to receive them within 3 weeks, the answers. So I'll send them to you today, and then we'll look forward to receiving those.
Let me just correct you. We have a precedent. We would appreciate a response within 3 weeks, and if you're able to hit that, great. You won't hear from us again, and if you don't, you might hear from us.
Thank you.
Mr. Stewart, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through the chair of the witness, so the Prime Minister's house at 24 Sussex is a lower priority than an $8 million burn. Clearly yourself, the board of directors, the government, everybody involved failed miserably to achieve value for money. One example of that is you actually put an elevator in this building that goes underground. So when you choose to build underground, the costs are significantly greater than building from the ground level up. So clearly you failed miserably to get value for money. 2 million Canadians per month are going to food banks. Many of them can't afford housing. We have a vast shortage of housing potential. We have people that literally can't afford to eat in this country. You had private security, where there's already 2 levels or multiple levels of security on this ground. There was a private security detail attached to the construction of this building while you already have the 2 levels of security on the grounds to begin with. That I find very strange, considering I had to walk through a mob on camera between Confederation and West Block the other day where protesters were literally breaking our laws and obstructing MP's ability to get to work. So I'm confused why there'd be so much security there. But do you believe for a second that Canadians trust you to manage a $40 million plus project on the Prime Minister's house when you've in fact prioritized a barn in place of it?
So, Mr. Chair, I do need to say that the NCC takes the stewardship of public funds extremely seriously. We ensure not only that there are external opportunities for review of the NCC's conduct, financial conduct, through annual audits by the Office of the Auditor General.
Do you believe that, though? Do you believe that prioritizing an $8 million barn over what you said the Prime Minister's own house, do you believe that Canadians could trust you when you placed a barn as a greater priority as the house?
So, Mr. Chair, it may be useful to note, since the question of 24 Sussex was raised, that the NCC is awaiting a decision by the Government of Canada on the future of the official residence of the Prime Minister, and it might be
Thank
interesting.
you for that. I appreciate the answer. I'm gonna start there. Let's look at the budgeted $8 million to renovate the Prime Minister's cottage at Harrington Lake. The last figure in the public domain was more than $11 million to renovate the cottage, $3 million more, a significant financial cost to Canadians. Can you provide the committee with the most up-to-date figure for the renovations at the Prime Minister's Harrington Lake cottage?
Mr. Chair, yes, we can.
Yeah, what is that number?
Oh, I don't have it on me. I wasn't prepared to speak to that property as
Really?
part of
So that's one of the properties that you manage, but you're not prepared to speak on it. So in a sense, you've come totally unprepared, because you'd have that answer. What is the total cost of the renovations to the Harrington Lake cottage that the Prime Minister likes to run to on occasion when he likes to hide? What's the cost of the renovation?
Just okay. It's not a point of order. Mr. Stewart's made his point. Why don't we hear from the witness?
Mr. Chair, if I
Well,
could, on
okay.
a point of
Do you,
order.
maybe I'll. That is all right. Fair point. Do you have a point of order?
It's
Badgery is not a point of order.
yeah. Well, that not allowing the witness to
No. It's
and it's the and it is the manner in which Mr. Stewart is addressing the witness.
right. Neither of those are points of order, Mr. Blois. I give members great latitude here to both speak and press for answers. I recognize that Ms. Nussbaum has said he will provide that information. Mr. Stewart feels that a answer should have been forthcoming immediately. He's done his question, and now we're going to turn the floor back to Nussbaum. But I expect members to moderate themselves here, and I appreciate when they do that. But a good committee does involve some push and pull on both sides. So, over to you, sir.
Yeah, very happy through you, Mr. Chair, to provide accurate answers to the questions which were posed in writing as part of the list of questions which the member indicated would be forthcoming.
Thank you, Mr. You get about a minute, 45 seconds.
So clearly you've come totally unprepared. So Trudeau spoke about this in his memoir about how it was his childhood haunt, and he was astonished by the shape it was in. So can you confirm if it was Prime Minister Trudeau who approved and directed the National Capital Commission to undertake more than $11 million in renovations that we know of to his beloved cottage that he detailed glowingly in his memoir?
Mr. Chair, as I stated in my opening comments, the governance of the NCC is very clear. It's the
Yes or
board
no,
of
please?
directors.
Just yes or no.
It's the board of directors who make the
No,
decisions.
that's
The Prime Minister
sorry,
had no involvement.
Mr. Chair, I've asked a yes or no question. I expect a yes or no answer.
Unfortunately, that is the time. I appreciate Mr. Stewart. Sometimes we don't always get what we want. I understand your frustration, but the witness has agreed to provide information, and I'm sure he's going to do that.